What's up guys, this is Quincy, or Cutesip, whichever you want to call me. I just want to show you, since I've been playing for like 4 months now on PC games, I might as well have to spit it out right away. I built it up, I didn't even get to show it. I did play, and then I upgraded it. But since friends were asking me, when are you going to show it, or what stories are there, how'd you build it, I decided to just show it all once and for all, from the recordings that took 2 months to fill it up, from the times that we bought the first piece, to the second to the last piece. And before we get onto it, for those who wants to just see the specs right away, I'll put it in the description away from the video so y'all can just read it and just compare it, at least for those who have like higher end components that I don't have. And for gosh sakes, I should have looked at PC Part Picker just for me to understand everything about it, instead of just spending at least $1,000 for this whole thing. So if you were in my position, at least just look at the price difference or choose whichever ones you feel like it. As long as it's power consumption wise, electricity, your TV's resolution, anything like that. Or anything that you can handle for a budget PC. So let's get right to it. So the first one we got here is the EDMAX AC600. It's a wireless adapter. Like, you don't have to depend on Ethernet cords or LAN connection. Like, if you want to use it like your laptop or some cases, as long as it goes up to like 5.5 megabits per second, it's $20 and it's pretty good for you. As long as you download the drivers, and if it doesn't work at some point, you can just call customer service. For the RAM, I got myself from Crucial the Ballistic Sports of 8 gigs. Well, 8 gigs is just a start, and since the motherboard I will show you later just requires like 16 gigs total, why not just put a DIMM slot of 1 right there and then add 1 later on? Which I ended doing since I gotta upgrade some stuff. And it was worth like just having 16 gigs in case if I were to like put some more programs in it later on that requires that much RAMs. For the hard drive, I had 1 terabyte from Western Digital Caviar Blue color. Useful for mass storage for videos or any files that you want to keep in, but I am not going to use it as my boot drive. Even though it spins like a disk of 72,000 RPMs, that sounds fast, but it's not fast enough compared to how quick the freaking SSD can boot up, and how quick it can load up my games. A thermal compound is a necessity between your CPU and the cooler that you will use. For my boot drive to load my OS and games, I've used this SSD of 500 gigs from Samsung 850 EVO. This right here is an essential to load up mods, to load up your applications, and it just brings it up from the bottom to the top within 5 seconds. That's how good this SSD is. Although you don't really need like 500 gigs, it's good enough to just get 125 for a cheaper price and have like your hard drive for like games just to load it slowly. For my case, I just used the games into the SSD while the hard drive's like for special need. Special? Oh gosh, why'd I have to mention special? Now you already know. Oh gosh. For $70, I got myself an Intel Pentium dual-core G3258. Well, dual-core as in mostly you can like run internet, do emails, anything like that for average everyday user who don't need the extra 2 cores. But in this case, it worked for me through like almost every games except new ones that requires 2 more cores. Even though I didn't increase my clock speed to overclock, I had some fun times to struggle of how I couldn't play like Batman Arkham City on it or any such, of how, oh gosh, just dual core itself just makes the frame rate so low. But in the end, it was worth it to replace it with the i5. For my mobile, I went with an Asus H87i Plus. Well, I didn't want to go with C97 anyways, but anything I could do within the motherboard, it was just useful for enough for me to like maybe overclock. Since it's a mini ITX, I have to get myself a case that would accommodate with it. I wasn't looking forward to mid-tower since I'm still transferring myself from console to PC, so not yet for the mid-towers, like not yet for those good old designs. I gotta stick myself with a small functional board that's very useful. With a PCIe 3.0 usage, it was worth it just to switch from a dual core to a quad core. For those who already know which cooler I chose, liquid cooling obviously, because better possibility of overclocking, and the CPU stock cooler just sucks in general. So why not use a Corsair H60 with a slimline fan just to make it fit in as soon as it can, so I don't have to feel so depressed of not posting the video. The cooler itself has a pre-applied thermal compound, so I don't have to use the one that I bought earlier, but since I had to replace the CPU, I had to clean up the old compound effect with alcohol and put in the new one. Just squeeze it in like a tiny dot, enough for it to like split out, and it's just good to go. Thank goodness that I bought it. For my case, haha, my case, well, I used the Silverstone Milo series of ML07. It's a mini ITX case that just is useful for like putting it under the TV. When it comes to mini ITX case, cable management is the #1 enemy against me. Like tangling and reorganizing and twist tying instead of zip tying. That's partially why the CPU cooler just sticks out against me and I couldn't close the case like I wanted to. But nevertheless, as long as the magnifying thing right there is useful. Notice how in the case there's like a thin hole or basically a CD insertion right there. So I got myself the Panasonic Blu-ray writer that costed like $80, but you can get one like for a way cheaper price. And that's where the slim SATA to SATA adapter comes into play, so I can connect it from that connection to the motherboard / power supply, which I'll show you next. Oh gosh, I had to get myself a cheaper one, like $15, but the connections of that were real odd, like IDE to that connection. That got me so lost I had to return the product so badly. But the Blu-ray counts. The Blu-ray will always count. Just put it into player insertion of any games or any movies. For the almighty graphics card against the console gamers, it is not the GTX 980 Ti. It's not even the newly GTX 950 for the noobs. No, it's that runner-up of the GTX 960 from EVGA of Nvidia. What am I gonna say? It's just 2 gigs of, well, budget, because graphics card nowadays, they're like real demanding of like what it is. And what do I mean by graphics cards to everyday users? Well, say you're playing the game on your laptop without a graphics card, your games will run super uber slow, just depending on your CPU. Having this graphics card and external under PCIe, well, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about RAM usages, anything. That's where the VRAM takes over and like fluctuates with your games and just makes it so smooth. With only 2 gigs, because that's all I need for my case until maybe I want 6 gigs if I ever would get a 4K television, just to make my experience real lively. But that's not my case for this time being. For the power supply, I use Silverstone's SFX series of 450 watt, mainly because my graphics card uses up to 300 watts, so why not 450 for safekeeping? And 80 plus gold just cause of efficiency ratings, I guess. I could've got myself a bronze, but like $30 more, it was just worth it since I always like turn it off and turn it on again. I don't want to like leave it on all the time, all day, kinda like my laptop, so hopefully it doesn't deteriorate like years by. By then, I would plan to get myself a new graphics card, hopefully the 980 Ti, along with the 600 watt of supply. I also bought myself a Corsair AF220 of 2 fans basically, that glows up LED light for like chassis fan or whatever such. But for some situations, since you gotta look at the instructions, you gotta connect some stuff, somehow I couldn't connect with the CPU fan and the chassis fan while we have 2 of them. So I had to purchase myself a black sleeve fan splitter cable that just connects the chassis cable, and then like you can put like 3 cables within using the cords from the LED fans to using the cords of the slim fan for the CPU cooler. Because somehow the CPU cooler, you have to like connect it to that one slot, and the chassis fan, you just have to act that fan as the chassis cooler. It's kind of weird, but that's just how it runs for the business. I was lucky enough to have 2 of those fans under the ACX fans of my graphics card, so hopefully most likely it will make it cooler since I'm blowing it from the outside to the inside. I was lucky enough to purchase Windows 8.1 from my university store or my college's store for like 20 something bucks just to install it in, and then like upgrade it to Windows 10 for free. Like that's a blessing right there. I don't even care like how like buggy it was when it first came out, but with the updates just coming in from both my laptop and my PC, it kind of ran real smoothly, along with that classic button right there. Anyways, enough of this video. It was hard for me to just come up with the dialogues myself since I stutter a lot. But for the disclaimers of me being an Intel fanboy and an Nvidia fanboys, AMD CPUs and GPUs, the R9 the Radeon R9 series, I believe that still can do well with just 8 gigs for only like 390 something bucks. Like, I gotta say, for a cheaper price, maybe a little higher consumption, that's pretty fine. I don't mind. Especially when it comes to with the DirectX 12 quality coming up. Maybe the Nvidia might catch up, maybe it won't. But it gives AMD a good chance to catch up and stuff. I'm glad of it, and if you're... oh gosh, I should have got some more cheaper stuff instead of this, but I do thank my job, and I just hope I can separate my work from my video games real well. So this might be a closing for now, and I'll see y'all later. HTPC here, y'all. Peace.